The next presenter is Greg Cady, and we're going to be talking about the Nfpa 3000. Now, the interesting thing was last year, this was a brand new document. In fact, I don't think it was even in publication yet when we first started. So, moving into 2019, it is now in publication. Some of you may have already seen it or may have already read it, but it is out now. But this was going to be breaking information last year, but it's probably not as breaking now. But Chief Cady.
Okay. Yeah. Does that work? Yeah. So I stand between you and lunch, which is always a dangerous place to be. Okay. So we're going to talk today about the standard. It was released last year. It was released as a provisional standard for, it's only the second time in NFPA's history that they've actually done a provisional standard. And the reason that it is called a provisional standard was it was released in a hurry with the understanding that if we needed to get it out there, but that there was probably going to be for revision immediately. So a provisional standard automatically after it's released goes right back into the revision cycle. As you all know, under our normal process, it's a several-year process to get a standard through all of the things and get it eventually certified by the National Standards Institute, ANSI. All of NFPA's codes are ANSI accredited as American National Standards. You see that document name on the first page of any of our standards that you open up. So ANSI allows for provisional standards. And like I said, we've only ever done it twice. This particular one, because of the subject matter that it's dealing with, we were asked to use this process and expedite it. The person who came to us, Chief Otto Groves, who is from Orange County in Florida, was the incident commander on the fire side, combined incident command for the Pulse nightclub shooting. So, in the aftermath of many of the things that came out of the Pulse nightclub shooting was his recognition that it was not a very smooth process, and that something needed to be done to try and bring some structure into these types of incidents. So Otto came to NFPA, made a proposal. They agreed to do it. We put together, we called for people who wanted to be on the committee, which you can imagine. We got an awful lot of people who wanted to be a part of this, who had expertise. Normally, NFPA only has 30 people on its committee. This particular committee has 40 people. And because it has federal representation, it has state representation, it has local representation, because of the subject matter that is involved. So, active shooter hostile events continue to happen in the United States, unfortunately. We know that. We see them continually taking place. We're looking for ways, trying to figure out how do we do a better job of protecting ourselves as responders, as well as the communities that we're responsible to provide that protection to. And NFPA provides guidance for everything, some guidance. And what the critical piece is, for me, having worked in 2 departments here in Virginia, Hampton and Virginia Beach, is to recognize that there's differences in all of those communities that has to be taken into account when you are looking at how you're going to address this. So as Chief Davis said last year, the hurricane came and kind of pushed things aside to take care of that. And having lived in a city that the eastern border of was France, I understand how often hurricanes come up the coast. I was the chief of Virginia Beach for, I think, 8 days when Hurricane Bonnie decided to show up. That was a pretty easy one to respond to because, you know, I think you all know, I knew who the mayor was and the city manager. Of course, you know a lot of people in the department and haven't been in Hampton. But I didn't know much about the city. I was still actually living in Hampton. So what this standard, what we try to put together is provide that guidance to take advantage of the information that's already out of there. A lot of you already have a variety of plans that protect your community. This is a way of trying to make sure that as you look at this, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can take advantage of what you already have. So how is it that we can help from Nfpa standpoint to help you provide public safety in the community? Active shooter incidents. So we talked about statistics. So from 2000 to 2017, there's 250 incidents, a little over 2,200 casualties. But then you look at just 2016 and 2017, 50 incidents, almost 1,000 casualties. So when you look at the statistics and the data, these are where these incidents have occurred. The school shootings obviously get the majority of people's attention. They're big events, and they generate an awful lot of news media coverage, as it should. But the reality of it is where most of these incidents occur are in commercial buildings. And a lot of people don't realize that. And so it is a critical piece then to make sure that we are looking at where those incidents occur based on the data, and how do we make sure that we are inclusive enough to bring all those in. Now you first say to yourself, well, there's got to be more incidents. We don't have the 2018 data. This is the incident information from the FBI. And we talk about data collections. So the FBI, when they decided doing active shooter data collection, they picked incidents where only 3 or more people died in these. Why they did that, I don't know. I guess you got to pick some place to start. They just picked 3 or more. So there are more incidents that have occurred. They just don't necessarily rise to the number of 3, which I guess is good. But it then does not include itself in the statistics that the FBI puts together for this. So hopefully, since 2018 just ended, the FBI will update its information and will be able to add in some of the other big incidents that occur. Educational institutions are another big part of where these occur. If you just look at the, you add the two, about 65% of the incidents are either in commercial or education places, and then it goes down from there. And it would make sense to have them in commercial structures and schools because there's lots of people there. And if you're interested in doing something as a shooter, you're going to go where the people are at. The incidents, they occur all over the country. It is not specific to any one particular area. It is everywhere across our country, unfortunately. Some places a little bit more than others, but pretty much it is from one coast to the other. So what does Nfpa 3000 actually do? Well, what it does is it provides resources for community leaders. It offers tools to be able to help plan, respond, and recover from those events. To me, the last one, the recovery part, is clearly the most important and the most difficult to do. What it doesn't do for you, it doesn't give you a list of tips to follow, and it doesn't detail the local tactics. As I said before, when you look at what it takes to evacuate the Hampton Roads region, it takes 48 hours from the time you decide to say go to get everybody out of there because you're stuck at the end of the cul-de-sac. I have had more than one conversation as the chief with the city manager about it's time to tell people to evacuate. When you want to evacuate, now you all know, I mean, the hurricanes come up the East Coast on a regular basis, generally in September and October. September and October in Virginia Beach in summertime, the sun's shining, it's 95 degrees, and you've got to tell them to get rid of 1.6 million people. Shut down hotels, do all of that stuff. This is a pretty interesting conversation to have, and it's even harder to get people to listen to. Even when they know that the evacuation is necessary, it's hard to do that when you're looking at a bright sunny day. So, but that's a different situation than trying to evacuate people out of Richmond. It's a different situation. They've got more access and entry points and ways to get out if they need to evacuate. So it can't tell you what the local things need to understand. But there's 4 main concepts in Nfpa 3000. It is whole of community. It has got to be everybody involved in planning for these events. Unified command is an easy concept to talk about. It's a darn hard concept to make work. We have people that are used to doing things different ways. The fire service, in almost every case, is out responding with a group of people. It is very, very rare that you're sending a firefighter out by themselves. Our colleagues in law enforcement is the exact opposite. Most of the time, it's a single officer who handles the event start to finish. Now, all of a sudden, you're going to say, forget all of those things that you normally do. You're now going to put in place this new thing. And what we know is that people in stressful situations react the way that they are trained. Let me give you an example. There's some of you old enough to remember in the early 70s into the early 80s, South Florida, the Jamaican drug gangs were doing a very brisk business, and they were having a difficult time from the law enforcement community to try and solve some of that. So this one particular incident, the FBI agents are going in to execute a search warrant, ends up in a gun battle with between the FBI and several of the Jamaican drug guys. So they lost 3 FBI agents. Now, I would tell you, as someone who has worked with the FBI over my career for a very, very, very long time, great group of people, well-trained, smart. They don't go into incidents and expect to lose anybody, let alone lose 3 officers. So to their credit, they went in and took a real hard look at how did this happen. So the first thing that they found out was they issued 6-shot revolvers. 6-shot revolver, AK-47. Guess who wins? The AK-47. So they got rid of the revolvers and went to automatics. And they also issued long guns. Very, very smart. But another thing that they found when they were doing the investigation is that 2 of the agents who were killed had empty shell casings in their hands. Now, you think, what the heck is going on? Now, as the chief of Virginia Beach and in Hampton, I was also the fire marshal by statute, so I had a gun, went out on the range every year, requalified, did all that fun stuff. Anybody want to guess why they had shell casings in their hands? That's right. When they were recruits in the FBI training academy, you better make sure you don't drop those empty shell casings on my training record. Because if you did, you were in big trouble. Taught them, you empty the bullet, you empty the casings in your hand, you put them in your pocket. So think about it. So the FBI said, wait a minute, these guys are in a gun battle for their lives. And they're holding on to shell cases. And that was when they changed the training program also. Because they realized, like the Army and the military has known for years, you fight like you train. And if you want them to act correctly, you better make sure that you do that from training. So they changed what they were doing, and that is what we need to look at doing with Nfpa 3000 also, is we've got to get people to think about what are the differences in how they normally operate, and how do we incorporate that into that conversation. You got to plan for the recovery, and you got to have an integrated response. All those things sound simple to do. So the concept of the whole community, you've got to get everybody engaged. And we all know how easy it is to say, hey, we're going to talk about X, Y, and Z. Please show up to do that. So, of course, as a chief, I get the note, and I hand it off to Chief Davis, and he hands it off to, So you end up with someone, and I've done that more than once in my career, showed up at a place and thought, man, I have no idea about anything about this topic, which is a whole lot. But regardless of that fact, how am I going to represent my agency if I don't know what the heck is going on? But you've got to have that whole community in there because it makes a significant difference. Everybody has a role to play. Before the incident, in the middle of the incident, and after the incident.
So as far-reaching as the event was, what I mean by that is there are people that weren't even at the event that have friends that were there, and as they're telling the story of their friend, they start crying because it's close family or friend, and it affects the entire community. It's a tight community, and even if people weren't there, they probably knew somebody that was, and it's affected them emotionally, absolutely.
So he was one of the people who was there at the Pulse Bank Club, talking about all of the people a lot who got out, and certainly a lot who did not. Unified command is one of my favorite topics. It's very simple. Well, you had the fire, EMS, and law enforcement all in one place. Everybody talking to each other. Everything goes smooth. All the decisions are made appropriately, and everybody knows what's going on. And I see an awful lot of smirks at them. Obviously, more than one person has been involved in trying to do something like that. It doesn't work as smoothly as it should. And as I said, a lot of it is the difference in the way we train people. And in a stressful situation, they're going to continue to operate the way that they train daily. So, Pulse Nightclub, just an example. They have a command post set up, they have police, fire, EMS, everybody there. They still believe they have an active shooter inside the building. If you ever see the drawings or the pictures of the building, there's very limited access to it. Basically, it was a cinder block structure, not easy to get in and out of. The law enforcement folks thought they still had an active shooter, that he was in the back of the building by where the bathrooms were. Their decision was they needed to make a secondary entrance in the back. Nothing wrong with that. Fire and EMS are on the front side, they're dragging people out through the door. When the SWAT team blows a hole in the back door, Well, think of what the fire and EMS people did. The SWAT team forgot to tell the people at the command post exactly what they were getting ready to do. Fire and EMS thinks, oh my God, the shooter is now throwing bombs. So of course, they evacuate the building. So, again, when they have this stuff, talking about having unified command and making it work takes practice. And that's the hard part to get done. Local representatives are critical in this. Remember what I said, the majority of these incidents take place in commercial structures. There's a, I can't remember, I think it was in Michigan, there was a mall that had an incident, they thought, an active shooter several months ago. And they activated their plan, and their plan was, and they had trained all the people in the stores, the store employees, that when you hear this go off, you run, you take everybody you can, get them to the back of the store, and shut the gate. It worked. It worked. It worked because they trained them and practiced. And it was the local representatives, they weren't waiting on police and fire, who eventually would show up. But they had a plan in place that they trained all the people who work there. This is what we want you to do. And here's why. An integrated response. How do you achieve an integrated response? You work at it, you work at it hard. It's a shared knowledge, and it's a shared set of competencies. It's making sure that we, as fire service folks, understand what our law enforcement unit folks need, what they're capable of doing, what the EMS community. So, when I worked in Prince George's County, Maryland, where I started, providing EMS was part of the fire service. So it wasn't a third service. Now in Virginia Beach, some of you may know, the Department of EMS is separate from the fire department. So it's making sure that you understand the localities that you're at and know what that knowledge base is, what you're capable of doing, and what are the competencies that people bring to the table. So you may recognize that picture. That is Christina Anderson is the girl in the famous picture. If you've never heard her speak, I would recommend. She's a great lady. I've heard her speak. I've been on the program with her a few times. But this is Virginia Tech, and in acknowledgement, I sent my son and my money there for quite a few years, 5. And he graduated the year before this took place. So Brian wasn't there, but certainly a lot of his friends were still, and siblings of others. So law enforcement competencies have knowledge base on tasks and things that they do, both at the federal, state, and local level. Threat-based medical care that they can bring to that. Fire and EMS competence, tasked by zone, integration with the law enforcement, responders, and competencies for the shooters, vehicles, the IEDs, the fires. And I know here in Virginia that there are lots of departments that have spent an awful lot of time working very closely with integrating the response between police, fire, and EMS into active shooter events. Jim Schwartzman, who's a good friend of mine, in Arlington County, they were able to really do probably one of the first ones that I saw that was actively involved in training with the police officers and putting in the team of people to be able to do that. Virginia Beach Fire Department provides, still as far as we know, provides the medics for the FBI office out of Norfolk for their SWAT team. So there's a lot of it that's going on, a lot of that integrated training that takes place that we can build on. It helps make sure that integrated response is as smooth as it can be. I think Virginia, in my opinion, is far ahead of an awful lot other states and certainly some of the other commonwealths. So response zones. The hot zone obviously is where we think that the incident shooter is, then certainly the warm zone, in the threat zone, but not quite the same, and then ultimately the cold zone. So just all-site operations. So the known hazard is what we expect to find in the hot zone, potential for the hazard in the warm zone, and then little or no threat itself in the cold zone. Why an integrated response management? What's the importance of it? This is a theater shooting in Aurora, and if you notice, the police vehicles got the place surrounded. Really great. Except when they started dragging injured people out, that's where all the ambulances were. So they had to get them from here to there. How easy do you think that was? It wasn't very easy at all. And it was because at the time, they just hadn't thought it through. They're looking at, well, this is an active shooter event. We want to make sure the shooter's not getting anywhere. We know we got people. So the fire and EMS folks, they're staying away. Except somebody finally realized, wait a minute, we've got to get the people that are injured to the medical care. We can't bring the medical people in there. So now we've got to take the officers that are trying to stop the shooter, and they're the ones who either A, got to do something with the medical person, or B, go past them and just leave them. Personal protective equipment. This is always a fun one. Law enforcement community, ballistic vests, identifiable garments, and means of communication. I'll talk about that in a second. Fire and EMS, ballistic vests, identifiable garments, and means of communications. It's a big issue in the fire service of issuing ballistic vests. And I have had the opportunity to do a little bit of research on and work on trying to help the fire service understand that. So, a friend of mine works for White Laboratories, which is up by Aberdeen, Maryland, which is one of the research labs for the Army Ordnance folks that test guns, ballistic stuff for the Army. And what he said was, most people, law enforcement maybe better than anyone else outside the military, but the fire service does not understand well that there's different types of ballistic vests that are meant to do different things. And if you don't know the difference, you think you've got a level of protection that you don't have. Now, my son-in-law, who is now retired, was on SEAL Team 6. And he had the absolute best of the best of whatever it was that came out of there. But he would tell you, depending on where they were going and what the operation was, it was a different ballistic vest protection each time, because they were evaluating the threat and figuring out what they needed to do. The fire department, and a lot of them around the country that I know of, have bought kind of 3 different size vests, and then you show up and you get handed one. And I appreciate the thought of that. But what Ron would tell you is, if the vest does not fit to you particularly, the chances of it protecting you the way you think it is are slim. The other thing is that there's a difference in the way men and women are built. The vest, they had a law enforcement officer who was wearing her vest and died. She didn't die from a bullet penetrating her body. She died because of the way the vest fit her front, allowed it to compress and hit her in the chest. It had to actually kill her. There was an impact of a bullet on her breastplate. as a team. So it is important to understand, if you choose to, however you choose to do it, that you understand the limitations of the equipment that you're putting out. Means of communication. We talk about the SWAT team talking and doing something. It is critical and it is hard to get everybody to communicate properly with the different radios, the different radio systems. It is a nightmare, but it's something that you need to figure out now before an incident occurs than trying to figure out how are you going to make it work when something's taking place. So I had a friend of mine who was the incident commander in the first tower bombing in New York City in 1993. So the New York City Fire Department, big fire department, lots of radios, two different frequencies. They had a frequency for the officers, they had a frequency for the firefighters. And what John told me was, he was on scene within, like 8 minutes, I think he said. The radio system failed. Just completely shut down because everybody was trying to talk at the same time and overloaded the system. He ended up using runners to go back and forth. So here's this great big city, there's all the stuff, and they're down to using runners to be able to get the message out, because even though they had all that, it didn't work the way they expected to in the middle of a really bad situation. It's practice, it's knowing what you can and can't do. The plan for recovery. So when does that start? It starts as soon as the incident begins, it starts after the incident's over, 24 hours after it's over, or does it start today? The truth is, it starts today. Recovery starts today. It's thinking about what are you going to do to look at how do you make judgments and how do you use the information that you already have and what is it that you want to get out to the community, and having that messaging done ahead of time can save you a lot of interesting conversations with the mayor and the city manager. So I'll give you the first one thing, and you can probably still find it on YouTube. Hurricane coming up the coast. We're having this press conference and people, we need to evacuate because, it's a big storm. We think it's going to hit Virginia Beach. We're not joking. You need to get out of here. And this news reporter said, well, Chief, what do you recommend if they don't leave? And unfortunately, without thinking it through, I said, well, it would be nice if they take a black magic marker and write their social security number on their arm. Which actually I thought was a pretty decent idea. The mayor and city manager did not see my statement the same way I did. And in hindsight, looking at it, yeah, it probably was. It wasn't the right thing to do. But it was true. So, of course, the news media goes down the oceanfront and they find these two young ladies out playing in the water, and one of them had written their social security number. So, at least they listened. But, yeah. So, when you're talking about doing the plan recoveries, my recommendation is you got to be a little careful about what you say.
Planning for victims to include first responders is critical. It's not optional. And we plan and we rehearse for triage, for response. We're getting the hospitals ready. We're going in teams with the different SWAT officers. But we don't necessarily think through that firefighter is going to need mental health services for 15 years. That disabled victim from the shooting is the primary caregiver, not just for their child, but for their parents. That a community is going to mourn and ache and recover from these instances for years and years and years. So we devote so many resources to the incident itself. When it comes to the active shooter, I think statistically speaking, that lasts between 2 and 5 minutes with some on the outer edges. Well, I'd like to see us devote a little bit more time, attention, and resources to the decades that are going to follow.
And that's a true statement. In almost every active shooter incident you look at, the incident is normally over with the active part of the active shooter incident. It's over with for first responders that were get on scene. The only one I know of recently that was unusual was the Capital Gazette shooting in Annapolis. You may remember last year. And it just so happened, because it was right across the street from Big Beach Mall, there happened to be a couple of police officers literally right across the street. But that still doesn't stop the guy from being able to kill 5 people. And I know Brian talked earlier, and I saw the hands raised about people who still remember their first day of fire. And I can, probably you, close my eyes and describe what the inside of the second floor bedroom looked like, where an 18-month-old and a 6-month-old child lived. I close my eyes. I can tell you exactly what it looked like. So you don't forget those times. They do affect you, and trying to figure out in that recovery process, what is it that you're going to do? So I was talking at a conference last week with Robin Dawson, who now works for Nfpa. And we were talking about the Parkland shooting. A couple of terrible tragedies in that incident. Not only just that day, but you may remember in the news last week, a second survivor of that committed suicide. Really terrible. But if you go to the complex where the Parkland shooting was, there's several buildings that are part of the high school. The building where the incident occurred, still, according to Robbie, who was there last week, still has an 8-foot chain link fence around it. It still has a deputy sheriff in a car sitting out there, because it is still a crime scene. It hasn't gone to court. They are preserving it. They expected all of the original court stuff to probably be done in another 4 years. So think about this. I think the school had 3,100 kids. So for 5 years, those 3,100 kids, plus the ones coming from the junior high school and the elementary school that were all part of that complex, get to be re-traumatized every day. Every day, the building's there, they get to walk by it and think about what happened. So the recovery process can take an extremely long time. And we're going to have to potentially continue to deal with it. Post-traumatic stress disorder is a real thing in the fire service. There's no question about it if you look at the statistics that are kept. We're losing more firefighters year over year to suicide than we are, luckily, getting killed in fires. Not just us, the police department is having the exact same issue. And the EMS department is. As a retired member of the Prince George's County Fire Department, I still belong to the Retirees Association. And in the last year, I know 3 of the paramedics that worked for me committed suicide after they had retired from the department. One of them had committed suicide and had moved away after she retired, and had committed suicide in March, and no one in the department knew about it until November that she had done it. So the recovery process for all of these is going to take years and years and years, and you're going to be impacted by it, and you better figure out how you are going to deal with this long term. You can pretend that, well, it's not going to happen, but the truth is, it does. It's happening day in and day out. And not just the psychological part of it, but in some cases, the actual, if you look at what took place from 9/11, certainly a huge incident. I think they anticipate by the end of this year, they will have lost more people cleaning up Ground Zero than were killed in the original incident. And it's going to continue, and it's going to affect us here in Virginia. Virginia Task Force 1 and Task Force 2 were both at the Pentagon. I stopped by there to see them on my way to New York, but I had people off of Virginia Task Force 2 who were actually up at Ground Zero, who were part of the advance team. So you just don't know how it is and who's going to ultimately be involved in this, because you're going to get pulled into it at different times. But think about it. I mean, we're talking, 9/11, and here we are in 2019, and we're still dealing with it. We're still dealing with the recovery part of it, and it's going to continue on. Most of the cancers that the people are getting are cancers that usually don't show up for 18 or 19 years. So, the roadmap that Nfpa 3000 is split into. So it gives you it starts at Chapter 4. Chapter 1, 2, and 3 are the same in every one of NFPA's standards. It's how it's put together and all of that. So that's why it's not included here. But the planning part of that is to look at doing the risk assessment, doing the coordination, resource management, incident management, all things that we do all the time. We do that in planning for fires. We do that in planning for whatever it is. I mean, it's not something that is foreign to the fire service. You do it day in and day out. We're always involved in it. So one of the pieces that I want to continue to remind you is take a look at the plans you already have, because you may find out that all you got to do is tweak. You've already got a lot of the information. The response piece, incident management. Hopefully, we're a whole lot better at it than what we are now. The communication center support, they're key to this. The competencies that we expect the people to have. The personal protective equipment, the training part of it is really, really difficult. It's hard. I was talking to somebody the other day that asked me about what kind of resources the federal government has to do large-scale incidents. They have a ton of resources. Make no mistake about that. But doing a large-scale incident itself is not only labor-intensive, it's expensive as hell to do. And it's getting harder and harder to find the money to be able to do that. But that doesn't mean that we can forget about it. We've just got to be more creative in trying to figure out how do we get that training going. And then the last piece is the recovery part, the continuum of operations, the hospital preparedness and the response, and then the recovery, the longest piece of all of it. The longest piece of all of it. And some things that make it even harder. You saw the report out of the shooter in Las Vegas. After all of that investigation and all those resources, the conclusion was, we don't have a clue how the guy did what he did. We don't know. There's nothing we can find any place that makes any sense to identify what he did. The shooter at the Capitol Gazette in Annapolis was in a 15-year fight with the newspaper over writing articles about him that he didn't like. So some of this stuff takes a long time before it ever goes. And they knew who the guy was and all that. Wasn't I guess they didn't think that he was going to do anything, but they certainly did. Where in Las Vegas, they closed the investigation and just basically said, we have no idea. So we're all left with all those injured people, all those unfortunately dead people, and all the rest of the people who are traumatized with no answer as to what the heck happened specifically. So doing the risk assessment, the facility assessment, the community-wide assessment, trying to see what are the resources that are out there. It does, Nfpa 3000 can give you that, but a lot of this information you already have from doing the pre-plan work. Everyone's informed and they're working from the same page. That's really the critical piece of this. So it is the authority having jurisdiction, the facilities and the community members, and they're a critical piece to this. It's getting the community members to understand what their role is in it, because clearly they are. And again, I'll just use Virginia Beach. I used to tell them, when I would go out and talk to the community. I said, it's 450,000 permanent residents of the city of Virginia Beach. Maybe a little bit more now. This is when I was there. If every firefighter I had shows up for work on their assigned shift, anybody think that ever happens? Never. There is 215 firefighters on duty. 215 into 450,000, you're going to be on your own for a damn long time before I get there. And so it is critical for them to understand what are the limitations, what is the expectation that we have for them, and what can they do. Doing a risk assessment. This is the former head of EMS in
In the
Boston.
Boston Marathon, one of the things that we're able to do is to understand that it is a potential site for a terrorist incident. We had practiced that, we had drilled that as 10 years before we had gone over specifically what would happen if the bomb went off along the route. Practicing that, having plans in place how to respond to that. There was no accident that the 262 people survived that event. The 3 that died, unfortunately, died instantaneously. But they were evenly distributed to hospitals. There were patients who received tourniquets. Patients were quickly removed from the scene. All patients removed within 22 minutes off of Boylston Street. So all those things make a difference as you're developing a risk plan. There was no accident that many people survived.
And that's the real key to it. It is recognizing the incidents that are going to occur and figuring out how is it that you're going to be able to deal with them, looking at that risk assessment piece. You know, and what we start seeing nowadays is you never know where those types of incidents are going to take place. Virginia is, you know, not only Virginia Tech, but Charlottesville. I mean, you know, you never know what the heck is going to happen. And even when you think you're not involved, you may end up being. I'll give you another example. The D.C. shooter, back in the news because he's trying to do a new trial, here in this area, shot and killed people. They go to take them to trial, and I get pulled into a meeting and says, oh, by the way, the trial's going to be here in Virginia Beach. Leave them alone. And the reason is the courthouse and the jail are connected by an underground concrete tunnel. So they didn't have to bring him out of the ground, so to speak, to get him into the courthouse, and they did that because they were worried that somebody was going to try and shoot him. We had 485 local, state, national, and international media outlets sign up for media. So they're thinking, you know, no one was shot and killed in Virginia Beach in this. What the heck do we have to do with this? So the impact of that, just, you know, you never know when you're looking at things, you think, well, gosh, it's not, you know, we're not going to be involved in it, but you may find out that that's not the case. So the program does try and help you look at having a template of thinking about what it is that you're going to do as a part of that. Facility readiness. You've got to look at the different characteristics. And we all know, like, we know now, that the incident that occurred at Virginia Tech, that guy thought it worked. He actually, the night before they found out, took chains and chained the door shut to make sure that it was going to work. It wasn't an accident on his part. He planned that out. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he planned to make that happen. Because he looked at the facilities of the building that it was in and knew, I only got to lock a couple of doors and they can't get out unless they jump out the windows, which some did. Getting those people to create an emergency plan is always difficult to do. Everybody has them, they fill them out, put them up on the shelf, and then you never look at them again until something's happening, and then they're trying to read through real quick. And they find out, in most cases, the phone numbers don't work, the same person isn't there. But it's just having that action plan and keeping it up to date, facilities piece is very, very difficult. They, look, they're trying to sell whatever the business is you're in. They're trying to sell products and make money. They don't think that something's going to happen. Yet, we continually see disgruntled employees showing up and doing something. You've got to be able then to share your plan and integrate it with the other ones that are going on. So when they had the shooter incident at the Navy Yard in Washington, D.C., they had a pretty good plan, secure facility. It's the head of, where they're sending the ships everywhere, so you just can't walk in the door. Unfortunately, the person who did the shooting had been an employee, still had a badge, and was able to get in because he knew. The fire department and the police department weren't able to get in because when the shooting occurred, the guards went toward where the shooter was, which was nice, except all the doors were locked. They didn't take the keys with them, so the keys are sitting back at the desk. And the police and fire department are outside trying to figure out how we can get into this facility. It's a huge facility. Check. So just letting them know. And then they got to develop plans for notification. How do you let all of these people know? I mean, you can imagine whether it was Virginia Tech, whether it was Parkland. You get a shooting in the school, parents are not going to sit home. They're going to rush to school. And I don't blame them. I mean, I'm a father and grandfather. If it's my kids, I want to get there too. So I understand that. So you better have a really good plan to let them know what the heck is going on.
Now, traditionally, the location where loved ones and family members would go to meet immediately following a tragedy has been called a reunification center. Implicitly, however, that word means that everyone gets reunified. But unfortunately, because of the nature of these instances and the types of weapons involved, that's often not the case. So we prefer instead to call it the Reunification Notification Center in recognition of the heartbreaking fact that some loved ones will be going home without their son, daughter, friend, as was the case in Sandy Hook in 2012 and many other areas. Further, those people who are reunited may be facing a very long road of recovery, physical and mental, possibly a lengthy hospital stay, and they're going to need specialized care and assistance, which we saw following the Pulse nightclub shooting and, again, many other instances like Las Vegas.
Yeah, you got to remember my story about the Social Security number. You got to be real careful about the words that you use. Door security. Brian talked about it. It is a hot topic across the country. Absolutely make no mistake about it. And trying to figure out what is the best solution is not easy. Although if you look and you study that not only is a locked door, the person keeps moving. In a lot of cases, they didn't even try to open the door. They shot through the little window. That's happened more than once. They just stick the gun in, fire it as many times as they can, and hit who they. They're not looking. In a few cases, they are looking for a specific person, but most of the time, they're just looking to shoot. So, if they can get in the door, that's fine. If there's a window, they'll shoot through it. Even if the door is locked. There's been a lot of work with the lock companies to look for ways to provide something that works, that does not require specialized training. And I stayed in a hotel last night, and I stayed in an awful lot of hotels, way too many. And you know that if you walk down the hotel hallway, if you hit the door handle, it doesn't open. If you're on the inside of it, even if it's locked, if you push the door handle down, it releases the lock and opens the door. So it doesn't require any specialized training. It just requires what you normally know how to do. Push the handle down, pull the door, and go. So there are things that are out there. Just be aware of it. And I know Jim's getting ready. I think there's a study committee, if I remember correctly, that the government has put together. So communication center support is critical, absolutely critical, and they are probably one of the biggest ones who get left out in the aftermath of the recovery. Nobody thinks about what the trauma that they went through. But they can make you or break you on the scene of an emergency. And I see a lot of smiles out there because you know that to be true. Yeah, they're not, don't make them mad because you'll pay for it. But they are great. They do this day in and day out. They're great for coordinating and helping what's going on. This is, you got to listen to it. This is just a radio track from shooting.
Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, confirm it. Two devices just went off at Boylston and Exeter. All units, caution.
All units be advised, explosive device. Everyone use caution, please. All units, hold your position. As I said, we've got concentration on the injuries. All units, hold your positions.
All the officers, all crews, return to their vehicles, the Alpha station.
Return to your vehicles, please, everybody.
Zone 1, forward tactical.
Zone 1, go.
Lieutenant, receive patients at the Alpha station.
Okay. Alpha team has the message, receiving patients.
Tactical,
IC, go.
Okay, tactical IC. We don't have a count yet on casualties. Well, we are receiving casualties coming in. Should be directed downstream towards Alpha. Would you notify all the hospitals that potential here for the mass casualty event? Everyone was in the barbecue. Angle 2. Exit there, Boylston. I got 3 people now. Heavy trauma. Exeter and Boylston. What's the section?
Exeter and Boylston, heavy trauma. Exeter and Boylston. Do I have any units nearby?
Paramedic 40. In Boylston. We're arriving now.
Okay, P40. Okay, Tango 1 on T. I need another BLS unit to Exeter and Boylston.
30 will start that way.
30, you'll start that way. 30. Unit with a 1 at the end, go. Zone 1.
Tactical 1. I have multiple casualties on Boylston. 673 between Exeter and Dalton.
673 Boylston, multiple. 673 multiple casualties.
3 so we heading that way.
X-ray 3?
30 heading that way.
30, okay. Division supervisor did not read that. Division 3, I don't know. patients at least. 40 patients at least. We need a triage stand brought over to the ICU.
So what you heard there, if you listen to it, it's pretty good dispatch. Pretty calm, relaying messages, getting things out there. Critical piece to be able to get resources in, get people out. The warning, the notification, and crisis communications is going to be critical in any kind of these incidents. Getting not just the messages back and forth as you heard there between the unified command, at the beginning you start with the hospitals, and different things are coming, and then ultimately, especially like in this case, I mean, those cameras are video streaming this stuff live. People are watching the finish line at the Boston Marathon on live TV. So they are going to know what the heck is going on. And this is where the critical piece for the public information officer to be able to get out here and handle. And for them specifically, it's the relationships that they already have built with the news media. If you don't tell the news media what the heck is going on, surprisingly, they'll make it up. And in some cases, it takes a long time if you can ever recover from it. You may remember this. In Hawaii, missiles impact. It took them 41 minutes. 41 minutes to say, never mind. Think about that. 41 minutes of people thinking, inbound missiles. The receiving hospitals, a lot of times you get left out in the process. Not only do they, Las Vegas, they still, I don't think, have an actual handle on how many people showed up at the hospital. Because people took them to hospitals in that whole surrounding area. But the hospitals, you heard in the thing, they were notifying of mass casualties and putting the mass casualty plan in place. But in some cases, if you forget to tell them, you get the hospital all geared up, waiting for people, and nobody ever shows up, which has a tendency to make them very mad, and the next time you want them to participate, it's a little difficult to do. So communicating with them is critical. They're the ones who are going to help with the victim identification, and that's a critical piece. People want to know, where is my loved one? Where is my friend? I want to know what the heck is going on. And telling them you don't know, or we can't tell you, makes it really, really even more stressful. Facility security is tough, and they are an integral part in the recovery integration. So you've got the immediate recovery, you've got early recovery, and then you have the continued recovery. And in some cases, like I said, with some of these examples, it is going to be years and years and years before it's over with. The incidents are occurring all over the place. So it's a call to action. You've got to be able to learn more about the process, about Nfpa. It is a standard that you can use for your community. It's going to help you identify and implement components that are relevant to your community. Again, use the stuff that you've already got. It's been a lot of work done. And if you need more information, you can go to our website, you can look on it. There's tons of resources up there. It's all free for you. So with that, I want to thank you. I'll answer some questions if there is any. Remember, raise your hand because I want to try and do it. And if there's none, which is also good, lunch.
Yep.